Prompto is a 90 cost dark unit that will be given to us for free during the Final Fantasy 15 collaboration. I'm going to tell you all about his kit and the highlights, things that you need to know to decide whether or not you should be building him. Now, I'm not going to cover the entire kit. If you want to see it, then go to warofthevisionscalc.com. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and you can also join us on the Mysidia Gaming Discord, where we have a War of the Visions channel and a War of the Visions help channel. So if you're a new player, you can come ask us all the questions you want, and we'll help you out the best we can. Let's talk about Prompto's gameplay style so you know what you're in for. His main job, Royal Guard Musketeer, is a ranged damage dealer class capable of applying many different status effects. Prompto can also decrease the AP, CT, defense, spirit, and dark resistance of his enemies. His sniper sub-job gives him access to Dispel Spread, which is one of the most impactful skills in the game. And now, Prompto's attack might not look high compared to other damage dealers, but it is on par or higher than other ranged units. However, he does not have access to a big missile attack buff like Aimed Fire. Prompto's TMR is his camera, and it is an accessory that gives HP, accuracy, and crit rate. The TMR ability also reduces the chance of being targeted and restores his CT by 250. So it's a solid TMR, it's not remarkable, we don't get any agility or any major damage buffs. The reduction in chance of being targeted is important if Prompto keeps his distance, otherwise he'll be caught in AoEs anyway, but we can also get that from Katone's TMR, and that would also give you a move up, a jump up, and some agility. So I don't think that this is something that you're going to be hunting for. Moving on to his stats, Prompto has 473 attack, which puts him 53rd in the game. It's on the low side compared to other units, but again, it's fine for a gunner. For reference, Frederica's at 416. Now, Frederica has lots of missile attack up in various forms, and then she also has different penetrations, so she'll probably do more damage than Prompto will, but his attack is promising for a ranged attacker. His HP is low at 2,821. He's not meant to take a hit, but really there isn't a gunner that is, unless you want to talk about Winter Victoria if you build her to be tanky, but for the most part our ranged units are meant to be evading and reflexing. So his agility is really good at 67, and he is the 4th highest dex in the game. This is going to help his accuracy, his damage, and his crit rate. Now, he has the same amount of AP as the UR, Zazan, and Barrett, but he also has acquired AP up on his range up passive, so you're going to be equipping that in order to get the one further range for his attack, so you might as well get that acquired AP up 40%. If you want to go crazy, you can also get 50% acquired AP up from his Assassin passive. Now, you might be wondering if Prompto is a unit that you can leave at level 115, but I think he is going to be someone that you take to 120. So he doesn't get any major stat gains except for 50 dex, but if you go to 115, you're going to miss out on Prompto's Delay Blaster. This is a skill that decreases CT and also has a chance to inflict slow, so that's pretty good. It also has a range height of 2, so it's one of his better gunner range skills. So he'll be usable at 115. He's going to be doing similar amounts of damage at 115, but you really should go to 120. I think you're going to want that 120 skill. Let's talk about status ailments, because Prompto can inflict a ton of them, including paralysis, blind, slow, disable, which is on his sniper sub-job, and then poison, which is on his limit burst. Now, you're going to want to have maximum faith on Prompto for the greatest chance to inflict status ailments on your enemies, and you're also going to want to look at his AI once you start using him. What skills does he naturally use? Do you need to turn things off in order to get certain status ailments to land? For example, blind is going to be really good if you have a dark evasion party and you want your opponents to be blinded. Slow is one of the most powerful status effects, so you're definitely going to want that, and that's on a height 2 range, so he'll definitely be using that. And same thing, disable, it's on a very weak skill, so he might not use it, but it is a sniper skill, which means it has that arcing bow shot, so he'll probably use that a lot, especially when he's higher up. Prompto has a lot of utility, so we're going to go over all of it. He has a TP buff that gives him 30 accuracy, and he also has very high dex. It means that he's going to have high accuracy in general to hit people even without a 100% hit attack. He can also give allies 40% attack up and +1 to range, so that's very useful for mixed parties where you're not with other gunners. It's better than aimed fire in that regard because it's giving them attack, which is something that can help any physical attackers. He's also going to be really good with dark parties because he has that 25% dark imperil on his 200 times potency attack. He's going to be using that attack whenever he can because it has such a high potency. He just needs to have that range and then the AP to be able to use it. He can also decrease CT with his best range skill, so you'll see that quite a bit. It has a chance to inflict slow as well. Very, very powerful. And then he can also knock 20 AP off from his opponents with his Kars Barrette attack, and this is something that you might want him to be using over the status effects, and you might have to turn off some status effects because being able to take people's skills away from them by taking away their AP is super impactful. Now, he also has a TP skill that looks really good because it has a break for attack, magic, defense, and spirit, so that's a lot of stats down. However, it's on a TP skill, so it's a non-damaging skill. The skill is height range 2 and it is an AoE, so I think if he's out of his AP and he's able to use this on someone, I think he actually will, and it's certainly going to be very powerful in PvE, but you would have loved to see something like this on like a small damage skill just so he has a better chance of using it on auto. He also has an attack that's able to attract enemies, so it's a big wide AoE that will be able to pull people in, similar to the Shadow Flare from the Black Rose Helena card. And then of course Dispel Spread is just so important. We're going to be using that a ton with him because it just strips buffs off of your opponents. That can cause them not only to just lose a bunch of attack, like if you hit a Jaden, you can take his 60% magic buff off, and then all of a sudden he's going to be dealing much less damage, but it also can screw up their opener, where if you hit someone and take their buffs away, those units might have to use their buffs again because that's what their AI is dictating, and therefore you've messed up whatever your opponent has set up to happen. We've also got to mention some fun facts for Prompto. He is immune to blind and death and has a 10% resist to charm, which is great for that live PvP play. He has a good missile resist at 15%, so we can build from there for some anti-gunner comps. And then all this utility that he has is going to make him a dream for just all PvE content. So status effects are often very important for specific fights. When you check all the enemies on a map, you'll see that a bunch of them are, weak to certain status effects, and he has so many that he'll be able to help out in a ton of fights. His LB also hits 3 times, so that can help you with some chaining, and then the imperils and stuff, and that TP skill that reduces defense and spirit will all be very, very good for PvE. Now, Prompto also has the reflex counter. You have to mention that just because it's kind of a hallmark of gunners, and it's something, because they're so squishy, that you definitely like to see. It's the counter that you have to equip. Prompto's Limit Burst has a 200 times potency with a 67% chance to inflict poison, so that's the base chance. It's going to be higher than that if you have high faith and your target has high faith. It's going to go off a lot of the time. Now, if you want to level up this Limit Burst, you're going to be able to increase its damage, but you'll also increase the damage of the poison, and poison can be really effective against big units with a lot of HP like tanks, so it's something that you want to consider, especially if his AI doesn't let him use it unless it's a little bit stronger. So you may have to level this Limit Burst. If you're thinking that poison is a big deal, then you definitely want to level this Limit Burst. Now, 43 AP seems expensive, but Prompto can acquire AP very quickly. After 1 TP skill, he should be able to use this at the start of the fight. This also has 2 height range, so it is a good range on a Limit Burst. He's not going to be limited to having to be within 1 height of the target. He could be 2 height down or up from them and still be able to hit them. And this Limit Burst also hits 3 times, so it's going to be really good for chaining. I wanted to talk a little bit about Prompto compared to other ranged attackers, because Prompto's attack is good for a ranged attacker. He doesn't have access to any missile attack buffs like aim fire, and that's a pretty big deal. That's 38% missile attack damage increase that he's not getting from a TP buff. Now, he does have a 40% attack buff, and that's something that you might be using on other party members with Frederica, or with any other gunner that you might use. But all of those other gunners or the rangers or snipers, they all have something else in common, which is that they have access to a lot of very powerful bow abilities, where Prompto really just has that sniper sub-job with the Dispel Spread to do a lot of damage. And then otherwise, all the rest of his attacks are going to be limited to that gunner range, where, if there's a wall, if there's a unit in front of you, you might not be able to hit your target. He has to be able to have a clear line of sight at people. He also doesn't have any missile resist penetration. He doesn't have any barrier breaks, and that's a big difference compared to a unit like Frederica. He can stack up to 55% defense penetration with a sniper subjob if he uses an active TP skill, but he also has a penetrate skill that has 40% defense penetration. That's on the shot, so we can go all the way up to 95% defense penetration on that specific skill, and then otherwise, as long as his buff is active, he's at 55% defense penetration. So he'll be weak against high missile resistance units. I think that overall, with the support that you see for lightning gunners or water gunners, that they might be doing more damage than he will be, unless of course you're putting Prompto in a missile party and he's getting that aimed fire buff from somewhere else. However, Prompto is also dark, and there is a ton of dark support. We've got ways to increase dark units damage quite a bit with VCs. So if Prompto is in a mono dark party, I think his damage is going to be pretty good. Now it's time to talk about the pros and cons of building Prompto, and we'll start off with the pros. He has a very nice amount of utility, the high accuracy, dispel, the buffs and the debuffs. The status effects are also very great for PvE and definitely could be good for PvP with some tuning. Dark is also just a good element to be in. A lot of units, we have a lot of units and VC support for Prompto that will help him out in dark parties, and he has the potential for very high defense penetration. So if you have a tank that is high defense but not built for missile resistance, then Prompto is going to be able to deal quite a bit of damage to them. Now he does also have some cons. No missile resist penetration and no missile attack buff are, those are big missing pieces for a gunner. His dispel spread has the best range, but otherwise he is limited to gunner range restraints again. So people getting in the way of his shots, that walls or height differences, those are all going to be problems for him, and something that other units don't have to deal with quite as much. Now it's time to answer the question, should you build Prompto? And I think that if you have a very strong dark account, then you might want to build him because he'll be able to supplement your dark roster quite a bit. Now at the same time, if you have a ton of dark units, you just might not even have room for Prompto at that point. But if you plan on bridging into a dark account and building up your dark units, then Prompto might be a really good start into dark, but you won't get his big damage without having the full dark support. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, I want to get Golbez in the future, maybe Prompto is a good get, and then you can start building out that dark side of your account for the future. But we also have to think that all of these free collab units that we've got, Tidus and 9S, Cecil, they've all been really great units. So I think that, with that precedent in place, that Prompto is probably going to be a pretty good unit. I think that he's going to be very good. I think he's going to be a thinking person's unit. You have to put some effort into him and his AI, especially, for your auto. But I think that he's one of those units, just like Tidus and 9S, that come in handy in so many PvE trials and fights and raids and all sorts of things, where all of the utility that they possess just kind of makes them worth having, even if you don't end up using them in PvP as much, although all three of those units just mentioned, great in PvP as well. That's going to be it for this video. I hope it was useful for you. Let me know in the comments if you're planning on building Prompto and why did you decide to build him, because there's a lot of decisions that we have to make. We have the Warrior of the Crystals coming out. There's also going to be Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy VI on the horizon. There's so many cool things in War Divisions and you can't possibly get them all, so you have to make a lot of decisions, especially with all these 100 cost units coming out. So let me know if you're going to be building Prompto or if you're more excited for a Noctis and Aranea, and otherwise I'll see you in the next video.